Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! His heart sank as the engine stalled, protesting with a sputtering cough. Black smoke curled from the Honda's hood, the smell of burnt rubber filling the car. Zachary Reynolds, already racing against time, felt a surge of frustration. Thud! His hand slammed against the steering wheel with full force, as if it were to blame for this unwelcome interruption. The road shoulder welcomed the car as it limped to a halt, a mere spectator to Zachary's plight. The costume party, now less than an hour away, seemed like an impossible dream. Not that it mattered anymore. He wasn't going to make it there in time, if at all. With a frustrated sigh, Zachary pulled out his phone. No signal. Even better. The late October air bit at his face as he stepped out of the car. At least his sister's apartment was only about 2 miles away. He could walk there, use her phone, and figure out his next move. Grabbing his duffel bag, he locked the car and started trudging down the road. By the time he reached his sister Morgan's apartment complex, the sun had almost completely disappeared behind the horizon. His dark blue jeans and gray hoodie did little to protect against the evening chill. After climbing 3 flights of stairs, he knocked on apartment 3B. The door swung open to reveal not his sister, but her roommate, Vanessa. Zachary? Vanessa's eyebrows shot up, her long blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. What are you doing here? Morgan's working late tonight. My car broke down. He gestured vaguely behind him. I was on my way to this costume party, but now I'm stranded. Can I use your phone to call a tow truck? Vanessa stepped aside, ushering him in. Of course. Come in. The apartment was cozy and warm, a welcome relief from the cold. Vanessa handed him her phone, and after a brief conversation with the towing company, Zachary learned what he already suspected. No tow trucks were available until morning. So much for the party, he muttered, handing the phone back to Vanessa. The one at Chris's place? She leaned against the kitchen counter, dressed in casual jeans and a purple sweater. I was thinking about going to that too, but got stuck finishing a project for work. Yeah, that's the one. Zachary sank onto the couch, running a hand through his short blonde hair. I'd been looking forward to it all week. Why don't you still go? Vanessa suggested. I can drive you. He gestured to his duffel bag. I was supposed to be Captain America, but I forgot the shield at home. Just have the outfit. Vanessa pursed her lips thoughtfully, then suddenly brightened. I have an idea! Without elaborating, she disappeared down the hallway toward her bedroom, returning moments later with a mischievous smile. So it's a costume party, right? People wearing things they normally wouldn't? Yeah, Zachary replied cautiously. Well, what if... And hear me out. What if you went as a woman? Excuse me? He blinked, certain he'd misheard. Think about it, Vanessa continued, eyes dancing with excitement. No one would recognize you at first. It would be the ultimate costume. Plus, I've got everything you'd need. You want me to cross-dress? The incredulity in his voice couldn't have been more apparent. Why not? It's just for one night, and it would be something completely different. Isn't that the point of Halloween? To be someone else entirely? Zachary opened his mouth to refuse, then closed it again. He'd been looking forward to this party for weeks. All his friends would be there, including some he hadn't seen in months. The thought of missing it because of his car was depressing. I don't know. He hesitated. I've never done anything like that before. Look, you're tall, but not massive. We're not that different in size. You're just a bit broader in the shoulders. I have dresses that stretch. It could work. 20 minutes and much persuasion later, Zachary found himself staring at a sequined red cocktail dress laid out on Vanessa's bed.
I can't believe I'm considering this,
he muttered. It'll be fun! Vanessa was rummaging through her closet. Plus, think of the story you'll have to tell afterward. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. After a quick shower, Zachary stood awkwardly in a bathrobe as Vanessa helped him into shapewear to create more feminine contours. The red dress, surprisingly stretchy, hugged his newly defined curves. This is ridiculous, he mumbled, tugging at the hem that fell just above his knees. Stop fidgeting. Vanessa knelt before him, helping him into a pair of black stiletto heels. These are size 11 women's. They should fit. I bought them online, but they were too big for me. Standing up in heels proved to be a challenge. Zachary wobbled precariously, gripping Vanessa's shoulder for support. Okay, now for the fun part. She guided him to her vanity. Makeup. Zachary watched, fascinated despite himself, as Vanessa transformed his face. Foundation smoothed his skin, concealing the slight stubble he hadn't bothered to shave that morning. Contouring created the illusion of softer, more feminine features. His eyes became dramatic with winged eyeliner and mascara, while his lips turned a deep, sultry red. Now for the hair. Vanessa produced a wig, blonde like his natural hair, but long and wavy. She carefully positioned it on his head, adjusting until it looked natural. Accessories, she announced, retrieving a black leather purse and a selection of costume jewelry, a delicate necklace, sparkling earrings for his unpierced ears, adhesive backs, she explained, and an assortment of bracelets completed the look. When he finally stood before the full-length mirror, Zachary barely recognized himself. The person staring back wasn't him. It was someone else entirely. Someone feminine, almost beautiful, with long blonde hair framing a face that somehow looked nothing like his own, yet undeniably was. Meet Daphne, Vanessa declared triumphantly. Daphne, Zachary repeated, startled by how high he could make his voice sound with a little effort. Suits you, doesn't it? Much better than Zachary for your alter ego. He turned sideways, examining his silhouette. The shapewear and dress created the illusion of curves where there had been none before.
This is strange.
But convincing, Vanessa pointed out. I doubt anyone will recognize you right away. That thought was both terrifying and oddly exhilarating. Ready to go? Vanessa asked, grabbing her car keys. Was he? Zachary, or rather Daphne, took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. The drive to the party felt surreal. Sitting in the passenger seat, legs carefully crossed at the ankles as Vanessa had instructed, Zachary became increasingly aware of how different he felt. The dress hugged his body in unfamiliar ways, the nylon of the shapewear a constant reminder of his transformation. The weight of the earrings, the slight restriction of the necklace, the smell of perfume Vanessa had spritzed on him. All of it combined to create a sensory experience unlike anything he'd known before. Remember, Vanessa said as they pulled up to the house where the party was in full swing. Small steps in the heels, hips swaying slightly. And keep your voice higher than normal, not cartoonish, just softer and more melodic. This is insane, Zachary muttered, but found himself practicing the voice anyway. It's a costume party. You're supposed to be someone else. Vanessa parked the car. Ready, Daphne? The name sent an unexpected thrill through him. Ready. Walking into the party required concentration. The heels demanded careful navigation of the uneven path to the front door, and Zachary was acutely conscious of how the dress moved with each step. Music pulsed from inside, and costumed figures were visible through the windows. Vanessa rang the doorbell, squeezing Zachary's hand reassuringly. The door swung open to reveal Chris, the host, dressed as a zombie with impressive makeup. His eyes widened appreciatively as he took in the two women on his doorstep.
Vanessa, didn't think you were coming.
His gaze lingered on Zachary.
And who's your gorgeous friend?
Zachary froze, but Vanessa smoothly intervened.
This is Daphne. She's visiting from out of town. Well, Daphne, welcome to the party.
Chris stepped aside, gesturing them in.
Drinks are in the kitchen, dancing in the living room, games in the basement. Thank you.
Zachary replied, remembering at the last moment to raise his pitch. The result was surprisingly convincing. Inside, the house was packed with people in various costumes. Superhero outfits, movie characters, classic monsters, the usual Halloween array. Several heads turned as Zachary and Vanessa made their way through the crowd, and more than a few appreciative glances were cast in their direction. "Vanessa!" a female voice called out, and suddenly they were face to face with Rebecca, one of Zachary's friends from college. She was dressed as Wonder Woman, complete with lasso and tiara. "I didn't know you were coming! And who's this?" Again, Vanessa handled the introduction. "This is Daphne, visiting from Seattle. Daphne, this is Rebecca."
Nice to meet you,
Zachary said, extending his hand and trying not to flinch at the sound of his own feminized voice. Rebecca shook it warmly. "Seattle, huh? First time in town?" "No, I've visited before," Zachary improvised, fascinated by how Rebecca showed no sign of recognizing him, despite having known each other for years. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Rebecca introduced them to others in their social circle, none of whom seemed to suspect that Daphne was actually Zachary in disguise. He found himself relaxing into the role, his voice becoming more naturally feminine with each interaction, his movements less stiff and self-conscious. Then came the moment he'd been both anticipating and dreading. From across the room, he spotted his best friend, Daniel, dressed as Thor, complete with a plastic hammer and flowing red cape.
"I'll be right back,"
he told Vanessa, who was deep in conversation with another friend. Making his way through the crowd, Zachary approached Daniel, who was grabbing a beer from an ice-filled cooler. "Excuse me?" Zachary said in his practiced feminine voice.
"Thor, isn't it?"
Daniel turned, his expression shifting from casual interest to obvious attraction as he took in the woman in the red sequined dress. "That's right, goddess. And you are?" "Daphne," Zachary replied, fighting back a laugh at his friend's reaction. "I'm a friend of Vanessa's." "Well, Daphne, can I get you a drink?" Daniel offered, clearly trying to make a good impression.
"Sure,"
Zachary accepted, curious to see how long he could maintain the charade. As they chatted, Zachary watched Daniel's face carefully for any sign of recognition, but there was none. His best friend of over a decade had no idea he was talking to Zachary. The realization was strangely liberating. As Daphne, he could be someone else entirely, someone more confident, more flirtatious, less constrained by the expectations that had always surrounded him as Zachary. "So, what do you do for work?" Daniel asked, leaning in slightly. Zachary thought quickly. "I'm in graphic design. Freelance mostly." "No way! My best friend Zach does that too. He was supposed to be here tonight as Captain America, but I haven't seen him yet.
Oh? Tell me about this Zach.
Zachary prompted, unable to resist the opportunity to hear how his friend described him. He's a great guy, talented artist, kind of quiet until you get to know him. He's been my best friend since college. Smart as hell, but sometimes too stuck in his own head, you know? Always worrying about what others think. Zachary felt a strange pang at this assessment. Was that really how Daniel saw him? Too worried about others' opinions?
He sounds interesting,
Zachary commented, taking a sip of his drink.
He is. You'd like him. Actually, let me text him and see where he is.
Zachary felt a moment of panic as Daniel pulled out his phone. A second later, he felt the vibration of his own phone in the small black purse Vanessa had given him.
Weird. No response.
Daniel frowned, putting his phone away.
He must be stuck in traffic or something.
The evening continued, and Zachary found himself enjoying the freedom of being Daphne more than he'd expected. He danced with several people, including Daniel, laughing as his friend tried to twirl him despite the height difference in the heels. He chatted with women who treated him as one of their own, sharing comments and compliments that would never have been directed at him as Zachary. Around midnight, Vanessa found him sitting on a couch, talking with a small group. "Having fun?" she asked, with a knowing smile.
"Actually, yes,"
Zachary admitted. And it was true. Beyond the initial anxiety, he'd discovered something unexpected, a sense of liberation in this temporary transformation. As the party began to wind down, Zachary found himself reluctant to leave. Being Daphne for the night had revealed aspects of himself he'd never acknowledged before. A playfulness, a confidence, a way of connecting with others that felt authentic despite the disguise. On the drive home, he was quiet, contemplative. "So," Vanessa finally asked as they pulled into her apartment complex, "what did you think of your night as Daphne?"
"It was illuminating,"
Zachary replied honestly. "No one recognized me, not even Daniel."
"Does that bother you?"
He considered the question. "No, actually. It was kind of amazing to be someone else for a night. To not have to be the Zachary everyone expects." Vanessa smiled gently. "Maybe it wasn't about being someone else. Maybe it was about being a part of yourself you don't usually let out." The words hit home in a way Zachary wasn't prepared for. He'd always felt slightly off-kilter in his life, like he was playing a role that didn't quite fit. Tonight, paradoxically, while literally playing a role, he'd felt more authentic than he had in years. Back in the apartment, Zachary started to remove the earrings, ready to shed Daphne and return to his normal self. But as he looked in the mirror, seeing the blonde hair framing his face, the careful makeup enhancing features he'd never appreciated before, he hesitated. "You can keep the dress," Vanessa said quietly from the doorway. "And the other things too, if you want. I have plenty." Zachary met her eyes in the mirror.
"Why would I want to keep them?"
"I think you know why," she replied gently. "The way you lit up tonight wasn't just about the novelty of a costume. There was something else happening." He couldn't deny it. Throughout the evening, something had awakened inside him, or perhaps it had always been there, dormant and unnamed.
"I don't know what this means,"
he admitted, fingers still touching the necklace at his throat. "You don't have to know right now," Vanessa assured him. "But maybe Daphne doesn't have to disappear completely after tonight." That night, sleeping in Morgan's absent roommate's bed, with permission, Zachary dreamed of walking confidently through the world as Daphne, free from the constraints and expectations he'd always felt weighed down by. When morning came, he carefully packed the red dress, the black heels, and the accessories into his duffel bag, alongside his unused Captain America costume. The wig, too precious and fragile to risk damaging, Vanessa helped box properly. She also gave him a small makeup kit, just the essentials, she explained, and a few additional items of clothing that might fit him. "Thank you," he said sincerely as she drove him to where his car was being towed. "Not just for the things, but for everything. Sometimes we all need a little push to discover who we really are," Vanessa replied with a warm smile. The following weeks were a time of quiet exploration. In the privacy of his studio apartment, Zachary would transform into Daphne, practicing walking in heels, applying makeup with increasing skill, letting himself experience the person he became in those moments. At first, it was just occasionally, a few hours on a weekend, an evening after work. But gradually, the time spent as Daphne began to increase. She felt right in a way Zachary never had. In her, he found a confidence and comfort in his own skin that had always eluded him. 1 month after the Halloween party, he made a decision. Starting with close friends he trusted, he began to share his truth. The first was Vanessa, who had already seen the beginnings of his journey. She listened without judgment as he explained that what had started as a costume had revealed a deeper truth, that he had always felt disconnected from his assigned gender, but never had the framework or courage to acknowledge it. "I think I've always been Daphne inside," he confessed, sitting on her couch in jeans and a sweater, still presenting as Zachary. "I just never had the words for it, or the opportunity to find out." "What are you thinking of doing now?" Vanessa asked gently. "I want to transition," he replied, the words both terrifying and freeing to say aloud. "I want to live as Daphne. It's who I am." Vanessa reached out and squeezed his hand. "I'm here for you, whatever you need." Next came the conversation with his sister, Morgan. They met at a quiet cafe, where he nervously explained his realization and decision. "So, let me get this straight," Morgan said after he'd finished. "My brother is actually my sister?" "Yes," Daphne replied, still using her birth name and pronouns in public, but feeling the growing disconnect between that presentation and her true self. Morgan was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "Well, I always wanted a sister. Guess I had one all along." The relief was overwhelming. With Morgan's support secured, Daphne felt stronger in approaching others. Daniel next, then other close friends, then eventually her parents. The reactions varied from immediate acceptance to confusion to concern. But what Daphne found was that those who truly loved her wanted her happiness above all else. And as they saw how much more genuine and joyful she was living as her authentic self, even the initially hesitant came around. The formal transition process began. Therapy, then hormones, legal name change. Daphne kept her natural blonde hair as it grew out, no longer needing the wig that had been her first step into womanhood. She cultivated a style that was distinctly her own, not the nightclub glamour of that first red dress, but a feminine aesthetic that reflected her personality. Flowing blouses in jewel tones, comfortable yet stylish jeans, and more manageable heels for special occasions. The black leather purse from that first night became something of a talisman, accompanying her through doctor's appointments, coming out conversations, and everyday life as a symbol of the journey's beginning. 6 months after the Halloween party, Daphne attended another gathering at Chris's house. Not in costume this time, but as herself. She wore a deep blue blouse that complemented her eyes, dark jeans, and low heels. Her growing blonde hair styled in a feminine cut. The black leather purse hung from her shoulder, containing the lipstick she occasionally reapplied throughout the evening. When she walked in, there was a moment of collective acknowledgement. These were friends who had known her before, who had been told of her transition, but many of whom were seeing Daphne in person for the first time. Then Chris stepped forward, hugged her warmly, and the party continued as if nothing unusual had happened at all. Later, Daphne found herself standing beside Daniel at the drinks table.
"You know," he said thoughtfully, "I met you at the Halloween party."
Daphne smiled. "I know. You had no idea it was me. You seemed so happy that night. Free in a way I'd never seen before. It makes sense now." He glanced at her.
"You're still the same person inside. The talent, the kindness, the humor. But there's something else too. A confidence that was missing before."
"I feel more myself than I ever have," Daphne admitted. "Like I've been trying to speak a language I never learned all my life, and suddenly I'm fluent." Daniel nodded.
"I'm glad you found your voice."
As the first year of her new life unfolded, Daphne faced challenges. Navigating public spaces, dealing with bureaucracy that wasn't designed for transgender individuals, encountering occasional prejudice. But she also discovered joy in unexpected places. The first time someone called her ma'am without prompting, finding community with other trans individuals, rediscovering her passion for art with a new perspective. Her graphic design work took on new dimensions as she brought her authentic self to her creativity. Clients noticed the change in her portfolio, a vibrancy and depth that hadn't been present before, and her freelance business flourished. On the anniversary of that fateful Halloween party, Daphne organized a small gathering at her apartment, a rebirthday celebration with those closest to her, Vanessa, Morgan, Daniel, and a few others who had been pillars of support throughout her transition year. The apartment reflected her evolution, feminine touches integrated with the artistic elements that had always been part of her space. Photos on the walls showed her journey, a few old pictures of her pre-transition self, alongside many more recent ones of Daphne, smiling with genuine happiness. "A toast," Morgan proposed, raising her glass. "To my sister, who had the courage to become herself." Daphne, wearing a simple but elegant green dress that brought out the color in her eyes, her blonde hair now falling past her shoulders, looked around at the faces of those who had stood by her. "I want to thank all of you," she said, her voice now naturally settled into its feminine register after months of practice and therapy. "A year ago, my car broke down, and it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me." "To broken down cars and sequined dresses," Vanessa added with a grin. As laughter filled the room, Daphne caught sight of her reflection in a window, confident, genuine, at peace. The black leather purse sat on a side table, no longer just an accessory, but a symbol of transformation. The costume jewelry from that first night had been replaced with pieces she'd chosen for herself, reflecting her own taste and style. What had begun as a hasty solution to a practical problem had become the catalyst for her true life to begin. From the moment she had first seen herself as Daphne in Vanessa's mirror, something had clicked into place, a recognition of self that transcended the surface-level costume. Now, surrounded by love and acceptance, Daphne knew that the journey ahead would have its difficulties, but the hardest part, finding and embracing her true self, was behind her. The sequined red dress hung in her closet, preserved as a reminder of that first night. But it was no longer a costume. It was simply one outfit among many belonging to a woman who had finally found her way home, to herself. After the party, as her friends departed with warm hugs and promises to meet again soon, Daphne stood in her doorway, waving goodbye. The evening air was crisp, reminiscent of that October night a year ago, but everything else had changed. Closing the door, she moved through her apartment, tidying glasses and plates, smiling at the photos and mementos that now told the story of her authentic life. On her dresser sat a small jewelry box, and from it, she took out the costume earrings from that first night, the ones Vanessa had given her with adhesive backs because her ears weren't pierced. Now they were. Small, elegant studs adorned her ears daily, a physical marker of her commitment to living as Daphne. But the original earrings remained a treasured keepsake, a reminder of beginnings. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Great party. Lunch next week?" She replied with a quick affirmative, marveling at how their friendship had not just survived, but deepened through her transition. He had become an unexpected ally, educating himself about transgender issues and standing up for her when others questioned or challenged. As she prepared for bed, Daphne caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror, blonde hair falling around her shoulders, face bare of makeup but still unmistakably feminine after months of hormone therapy. There was a softness to her features now, a physical manifestation of the internal changes she'd embraced. Changing into comfortable pajamas, she thought about how far she'd come. From panicked improvisation in borrowed clothes to living fully as her authentic self. From fearing rejection to finding deeper connections with those who mattered most. From feeling perpetually off balance to walking confidently in her truth. The journey wasn't over. Transition was an ongoing process, both physically and socially. But as Daphne settled into bed, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for that broken-down car, for Vanessa's inspired suggestion, for the party that had changed everything. What had started as a desperate costume had become the key to unlocking her true identity. The black leather purse, the jewelry, the carefully applied makeup, these were no longer props in a performance, but authentic expressions of who she had always been meant to be. Daphne fell asleep peacefully, no longer pretending, no longer hiding, simply being the woman she had discovered herself to be on a Halloween night when circumstance had forced her to look in the mirror and finally see herself clearly for the first time.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!